Let's turn to the last part of this lecture, to the legacy of communalism in India today. In September 2013, India's Home Minister Sushil Kumar Shinde publicly announced the central government's concern over the rise of incidences of communal violence throughout numerous states in India, rising from 410 incidences in 2012 to 451 incidences of communal violence in the first 9 months of 2013. In the 1950s and 1960s, communal tensions in the form of riots and pogroms between religious communities, primarily Hindu and Muslim, but of course between Sikh and Christian communities also, started to escalate, and Congress's secular vision for the country was challenged. Despite many notable episodes of communal violence in the first 3 decades of Indian statehood, the most significant wave of communal violence in India occurred during the Ayodhya movement from 1989 to 1992, culminating in the destruction of the Babri Mosque in 1993. The Babri Mosque is symbolically significant to both Hindus and Muslims, as it's built on a site that Hindus claim to be the birthplace of the Hindu god Rama. A wave of riots broke out across the country after the demolition of the mosque by Hindu nationalist activists, in which over 2,000 people were killed. The backdrop to the Ayodhya movement in the late 1980s was the rise of the right-wing Hindu nationalist political party, the BJP, in the 1980s. The ideology of Hindutva, or Hinduness, underpins the Hindu nationalist movement in India, seeking a pure Hindu state and challenging the secular vision on which the state was founded. Hindu-Muslim tensions culminated again in the 2002 Gujarat riots. The details of this episode are recounted in the Martha Nussbaum reading that you had for this week. You should also by now be very familiar with the name Narendra Modi, who was the Gujarat Chief Minister during the 2002 riots. His role in overseeing the state of Gujarat at the time makes him a controversial figure in Indian politics. Yet, as we've seen in the 2014 national election, in which Modi was elected as Prime Minister, Modi is a very skilled politician who's refigured his public image as a modern technocratic leader and economic liberal who can revive India's lagging economy. Despite this revived image of the BJP, other recent episodes of major communal violence, including Hindu-Christian violence in Orissa in 2008, and the Muzaffarnagar riots in the state of Uttar Pradesh in 2013, which combined displaced over 100,000 people, and alongside hundreds of other minor episodes of communal violence each year, we know that this is still a crucial aspect of India's internal security. We also know from studies that communal violence in India are mobilised strategically, often for instrumental reasons, such as galvanising a strong vote bank among members of a religious constituency in periods leading up to elections. We also know that security forces are routinely complicit in the violence when their political affiliation with one side of the conflicting parties is present. So to conclude, one concept for understanding how and why security forces in India justify repressive and violent acts towards civilian populations is the concept of securitisation. Security, when understood as a discourse, is an elite concept. There are certain scholars who argue that the process of securitisation is a discursive act or a speech act. This means that elite actors, such as prominent state leaders, define which issues can be understood as security. By creating an issue such as terrorism, border protection, or national unity as security, state forces legitimise violence. Security therefore sits above politics. Once defined, it's difficult for the public to contest this definition of security, and the state sees itself as justified in taking any means necessary to achieve their end of protecting its perceived national interest. Scholars such as Didier Bigot and R.B.J. Walker call this behaviour of security as insecuritization, because in every act of security there's always an inverse relationship in which others are rendered insecure. Counterinsurgency strategies that repress civilian populations through violence, torture, or extrajudicial killings, for example, may be argued to be justified in the name of national unity and state security. So when thinking about India's internal security, in your class discussion, you may like to think firstly about the relationship between states protecting and preserving the integrity and order of the state in relationship to the rights and protection of the civilian population. And secondly, you may like to consider the role that history and religious, or the construction of monolithic religious identities have played in defining the character of India's internal security today. and I'll leave it there.